James Wald.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I begin by declaring interest as my wife, the noble Baroness Evans of Bowes Park, and though she doesn't always make me call her that, is a member of the other place and was its leader for over 6 years. So I perhaps have had more dealings with members of the other place, including hereditaries, than most, and as a result have a view about how our two houses operate effectively in practice, rather than the somewhat theoretical perspective that we've heard from some of the newer members of the House. And the Lords play a very important revising chamber, without the guillotines and time limits that are so common in our House, whilst recognising and respecting the ultimate supremacy of this House. And in doing so, they can draw on the considerable knowledge and expertise from former defence chiefs, diplomats, scientists, engineers, business people, and yes, from those whom this bill seeks to remove the right to sit as peers. And the fundamental point that's reflected in a number of contributions from this side of the House and in the reasoned amendment is that this bill is brought forward in isolation from wider reforms. It ignores the convention that constitutional changes are based on consensus where possible, and it fails to provide time for a cross-party approach on wider reform. It can best be described as piecemeal, and as such conflicts with the commitments given in 1999 at the time of the House of Lords Act that hereditaries would remain until wider reforms came forward. Well, there are no wider reforms in this bill. Even the proposed retirement age of 80 has quietly been dropped. Perhaps ministers have realised the challenges in interfering with letters patent issued by the Sovereign and have not brought that forward. Or perhaps the timidity reflects a lack of consensus on the opposition benches about wider reforms, as we saw in response to Gordon Brown's proposals. Because such reforms would have to consider the issues of giving greater powers to the House of Lords and the impact that it would have on the primacy of the Commons, on the potential for legislative gridlock, on the desirability of creating more professional politicians. And what is the rationale, as many have commented on, of retaining the place, guaranteed places for bishops in the upper chamber? Those are just some of the questions comprehensive reform would need to address, and they require considerable cross-party consideration and analysis. No one would create the Lords today, but the system works. And this rushed legislation, which rather suggests a government lacking a substantive legislative programme, will remove considerable experience. It reveals a lack of knowledge of the contribution made by members, such as my noble friend, the Earl Howe, with whom I worked closely when he was the Defence Minister, and who has served continuously on the Conservative front bench for 33 years and 20 years as a minister. It ignores the role of the usual channels, the whips and the business managers, in seeking to manage legislation at both ends, as it were. The Earl of Courtown will be known to many from his distinguished service at 8 years as a Government Deputy Chief Whip, now continuing that role in opposition. Working with the Lord Ashton of Hyde, they navigated the Brexit, choppy waters and COVID in a House where there is no Conservative majority. I will give way, I'm not sure the Honourable Lady's been in for most of the debate, so I won't.
All right.
Those are just three of the peers who bring great experience and ability to the other place, many of whom are crossbenchers as well, who will be removed. I'm not giving way. Finally, I want to say something about the commencement of this legislation. If passed unamended, those accepted peers will be booted out unceremoniously at the end of the session in which the bill is passed. Surely the fairer approach, after the public service and commitment they've given to public life, is for them to remain there through to the end of this Parliament. To conclude, before embarking on constitutional reform, there should be a proper period of consideration. It's a sign of the complexity of reform of the House of Lords that previous efforts have not attracted the consensus that's needed. But the answer to that is not to bring forward piecemeal reform like that, pretending it has no wider consequence. Thank you.